Hey guys, welcome back to Noetic. Many of you probably know this. Noetic is now an app for your iPhone and your Droid. You can download it. You can access the courses, the discussions, the seminars that we have laboriously put together, and we hope you really, really enjoy them. Jump into the discussion sections and really get those things going. We feel like there's a nice little intellectual community emerging there.
Yeah, and we really want to hear like everyone's thoughts, opinions, likes, dislikes.
Yeah, you can interact directly with us. We try to be pretty responsive to the questions that you may have that come up during this podcast as you're listening, whatever.
And there's no question that's like too big or too small. Like if there's a question that you want to pose and you think, oh, well, people might think this is dumb, just throw it up because we'd love to hear what everyone's thinking.
Yeah. There are no dumb questions. Do you think that's true?
No.
Was that a dumb question? Possibly.
No.
I don't know. So we should probably just jump into it. I didn't really have any big issues from last week. My biggest issue from last week was the audio. Mea culpa on that issue. But as you can see, when God or Zeus or the goddess closes a window, he opens a door, and we've upgraded to an incredible recording studio. And
which is just like amazing. Such a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah. This is going to be, so hopefully the quality of our audio will go way up now. And my computer is fixed. So I don't have any big issues from the last podcast I want to address, but I think you had a preamble that you wanted to lay on everybody.
Right. So according to some feedback based off of one of our wonderful listeners, we wanted to, or not, well, by we, I mean the Imperial we, so really me, I wanted just to give a little bit of background because I think that a lot of times we just throw ourselves into the text. So this is just a little bit of background for any new listeners, and welcome to the podcast. So Simone de Beauvoir, she was born in 1908 and died in 1986. So she pretty much, kind of was a child or like a young woman in, during World War II, and she really came of age in sorry, did I say World War? I meant World War I. So she pretty much missed the cutoff for that, but really came of age in World War II. And that kind of touches on, issues of nationalism, colonialism, and obviously Nazism. And she was a partner of Jean-Paul Sartre, and who he and her as well were existentialists. And Luke, in one sentence, can you distill like a definition of existentialism?
No. But, I'll attempt it. I mean, the reason why I can't is because there are so many waves of existentialism. Mm-hmm. It would be like trying to say, can you define what a person is in one sentence? Yeah. Because the subjectivity is too varied amongst all the different philosophers. But there are Christian existentialists. There are... I don't know how you would describe Simone de Beauvoir as far as what type of existentialist she would be. She's a secular existentialist. She's not going to believe in any sort of God or anything like that, but she's still going to uphold what we would conceive of as democratic values, right? And then there's like Nietzsche, right? So Nietzsche is considered by many to be an existentialist, but he's going to think democratic values are mob perversions, right? So it's broadly... Existentialism is broadly concerned with the subjective point of view of the individual. It's not as concerned with systematizing sort of metaphysical structures and whatnot.
Right. So it's the emphasis on the experience of the individual.
Yeah, but there is not unity amongst existentialists about what the existentialist program ought to be. Right. Whereas, like, when you say what a Marxist is, yeah, there are different sort of camps of Marxism or whatever, but there's like a text that they're all sort of coming back to and referencing. And same things with Hegelians and other individuals. There's some sort of foundational thing. I think with existentialists, they are indebted to each other, but they sort of draw the world anew from within a great deal of the time. I don't know. I've said a lot and a little by trying to give a quick description of what existentialism is.
So existentialism is kind of a tricky thing. But I think that if we start off with the podcast, being able just to give our listeners just a brief background, it's a little helpful before we just delve right into the material.
Yeah, I totally complicated that. I should have taken the cue and made it much simpler. But yeah, that's okay. Yeah. But hopefully that's illuminating on some level. Yeah, existentialism is concerned with the radical subjectivity of the individual, but it's much more complicated than that. Okay? So we should probably did you have more, or should we just get into the text?
No, I think those were the main clarifying points that I wanted to address.
Sure. So we're going to be covering, I believe, pages 40 through 60 today. Yes. And let's see if we can kind of do that at a good clip. So we left off last time trying to figure out how exactly bad character or evil, in quotation marks, because there are no sort of unconditional values such as evil in Simone de Beauvoir's existential perspective, how these characteristics get formed, right? And it ended up having to be a discussion about what it's like to be a child in our metaphysical privilege and what it means to have our choices that sort of in adolescence when we confront the ambiguous condition. And just to restate, the ambiguous condition is that we simultaneously feel ourselves to be the superior thing within the physical order, but we also know that we can be totally crushed by it.
Right. And just for our listeners who may be new, can you define metaphysical privilege?
All right. So metaphysical privilege means that children children live in a world of unconditional value, right? So their parents are like gods, right? So the parent says, don't touch the stove. Don't eat the apple, don't put your finger in a light socket or whatever. And so the child has all these rules that are established for it. The child is not asserting its freedom to create moral value.
Right, and that also creates a lot of security for the child, knowing that they have absolutely no important decisions to make and they don't have really a hand or a responsibility for any of the decisions they make.
Right, so much security, right? They know, and this is a big insight that we had from the last podcast, they know that they don't matter in the world. They know that they have no impact upon the world, really, because everything is defined for them. And in this metaphysically privileged state, they act like children. They joyously embrace their irresponsibility. And that's what kind of allows for children to live in sort of a hollow dream world where they sort of can just do whatever they want, skip and jump. It all is sort of meaningless and sort of daydream about one day about being something sort of like heroic, like a zookeeper or a philosophy talk show host. That was my childhood dream. Did you know that?
Oh, really?
Yeah, when I was like 5.
Mine was a dolphin trainer, but dolphin training and philosophy.
When I was 5, I was like, I just want to butcher definitions of existentialism in front of thousands of people. And take a lot of crap for it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my dream.
Living the dream.
Yeah, I'm living the dream. Living the dream. Yeah. So, but she says that you can't remain in that state of metaphysical privilege forever. Right? That eventually it comes to an end in a period known as adolescence, right? And in adolescence, what happens? Do you recall?
You start to see the faults and flaws of people that are in positions of authority, be it your parents, especially your parents. Mm. So, like, thank you, mom and dad, for putting up with me in my adolescence. Teachers, coaches, you start to realize, they aren't perfect and they don't know everything.
Right. So like you stop seeing them as being these unquestioned gods, and you start to see them for the gritty reality of them, of what they really are. And like I think a lot of like indie films are driven by this sort of emergence out of adolescence, where we sort of are like, we have the veil pulled back and we see people like, oh, you know what? People aren't really heroes. They're heroes and anti-heroes, and they're good and they're bad, and they're conflicted, and it's a weird world, and it's all gray.
You start to see people in a more complete picture.
Right, and not only people, but rules and morality as well, right? So everything becomes ambiguous, right, in the adolescent stage. Now, Simone de Beauvoir says, like, whether or not you become a good ethical existentialist or other things, which we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about some different responses to adolescence, right? There are people who confront that ambiguity of their condition and society and rules and the gods within society, and they say, you know what? F this. I'm going to be a good person anyway. I'm going to define what it means to be a good person, because I desire to be internally justified in my freedom. I want to disclose my intelligence and my vitality in ethical projects, even in a world of ambiguity, because I want to make it into something that will have this forever beautiful, lasting impression upon it. I can bestow the dignity that I feel within me, within my breast, upon the world. I can sort of calcify in some way, even if it's temporal, what I believe to be the best part of myself, right? But not everyone chooses that. And today we're going to explore why people do not become good ethical existentialists. That was probably redundant. Why people don't just become ethical existentialists. She's going to say today, and I don't want to jump around my notes too much, but she's going to talk about that some of the responses to the ambiguous condition are to become what she calls a sub-man. There are going to be responses such as nihilism.
Yep.
There's going to be anarchism and surrealism and all these different responses to ambiguity, right? But the first thing we have to sort of talk about here is how people, what would make somebody not disclose their ethical being and create sort of conditional values. And in adolescence, right, people are terrified by this choice of having to become something, to make an ethical commitment.
Correct.
And over the time of being a child and adolescent, we develop these personal idiosyncrasies. Did you know that I have flaws?
No.
I do. I have lots of them.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, how about that?
I mansplain to you. I talk over you. What else do I do? I'm a diva. I'm neurotic. What are my other flaws? I'm a narcissist. Oh God, we can't forget the narcissist part.
Lest we forget.
Yeah. No, but I have endless flaws, right? That I have developed as a result of being in this playful irresponsibility of being a child and an adolescent. But guess what else I'm also trying to do, Jordan? I'm trying to be a good person, right? And I think that's probably why you hang out with me.
You try. I see you floundering. Oh, but he's trying.
Yeah, it's like he's a really flawed dude, but like he's getting it under control. He's getting that narcissism under control. He's getting that mansplain vibe under control.
Right.
Like I know he means well. Can you do you think I've elucidated that concept of what it means to kind of overcome these idiosyncrasies that we develop in adolescence and childhood?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me a little bit of kind of like the idea of like the Ubermensch, of someone who's faced with all these problems and just like throws themselves into the problems to overcome them.
Yeah. Like totally just staring down the adversity of ambiguity. That's what she wants us to do, right? Because she thinks that's how we're going to ultimately grow.
Yeah, because you have to confront it, or else you're just going to spend your entire life just living someone else's narrative, Yeah,
if you don't...
And that's no way to live. You're not really... You're existing, but not truly living.
Right. Like, if you don't engage in deep existential struggle, you don't become a growing individual in the existentialist perspective.
Right.
Yeah. And just to plug my man Kierkegaard, that's what his whole authorship is about. So Kierkegaard thinks that it's not only the ethical struggle that forges the individual, but the religious struggles, both in sort of a nebulous sort of spirituality and then in Christianity as well. All these trials and tribulations that involve us staring down these different ambiguous conditions. For Kierkegaard, there's not one ambiguous condition.
Right, they're like multiple.
There are multiple, yeah.
Oh,
and you have to take these different leaps of faith in order to develop as an individual. Simone de Beauvoir is going to stop at the ethical. Kierkegaard is going to supersede her.
Oh, man, that sounds crazy.
But I think an interesting question to ask when we do, because we are going to do some Kierkegaard at some point, I hope, is that why Simone is going to be okay with the ethical leap, right? Because, I mean, it's not like value exists, right? It's not like it's out there. It's not like it can be proven.
Right.
It internally proves itself.
Right. It's something that you make for yourself.
Right. So if she's willing to allow internally justifying reasons for us being ethical individuals, if there are internally justifying reasons for us to become religious individuals and then further Christian individuals, why won't she go into a religious space but is content to live in an ethical sphere? Is believing in God and believing in Christ that much harder than believing in the good?
I think that...
What do you think about that? What do you think it's easier to believe in being a good person than to believe in God?
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of it has to do with salvation, like what we've talked about in Augustine, that Christ is this redeeming figure, and I think that Christianity complicates that ethical code for Simone, because she's saying, well, if we have God and Christ to redeem us, then we can kind of, in our own lifetime, blunder as much as we want, and then if we, are absolved from our sins by God, then we're off the hook.
Yeah, that's what she's going to say. I just don't know if I agree with her.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, like...
Where are you at? Because I like... one of the things I really like about what we do here is I like seeing your mind evolve on these issues. I don't want to say mature, because I think you have an incredibly mature mind. But, like, we did the Augustine text, and I think you started at one place and you ended up another. How is this text affecting the evolution of your mind on these issues? Do you feel like you're coming back towards that center spot now, or where's the pendulum swinging?
Pendulum, I think, is still, in my mind, like, I can personally reconcile Christianity and, like, ethical conduct. Like, I think that they're two things that can work in tandem with one another.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily, it's not like in my mind, they're not mutually exclusive.
Right. And so Kierkegaard, the thing is, Kierkegaard is going to problematize that issue. Mm-hmm. And we'll look at that with a discussion. I think what we'll do next is we'll probably build a class around my dissertation. But a big part of Kierkegaard's fear and trembling is trying to separate the ethical from the religious. That mere ethical performance is not going to be service to God.
Right. It doesn't necessarily give you a free pass with God.
Right.
Or like it doesn't discount like a relationship. Like you still have to have a relationship.
Yeah, it's all going to be about a subjective relationship. So, but we're getting off into Kierkegaard realm. But I just want to set the stage for Kierkegaard that's coming later,
right?
And make the case that there is this critique of Simone de Beauvoir's project coming.
Yeah, and I think that we have to keep in mind the context too. I mean, the fact that this is like the 20th century, with like a lot more secularism,
Well, she had to live through the Second World War, and I think anytime you have to endure like fire bombings and Holocausts
and those
things
atrocities, like that would absolutely make me question my own faith.
Yeah, it's pretty easy for you and I to, well, I don't know where you are with your spiritual stuff, but it's pretty easy for me to be a Christian in one of the wealthiest counties in the whole world. So if I had to witness a Holocaust, if I had the Job experience, right? Mm-hmm. If everything was taken away from me, where would I stand?
Right.
So, anyway, so maybe we can be a little sympathetic to Simone about why she is so anti-Christian. But let's see. So I've mentioned some of the responses to the ambiguous condition. One of these is called the subman. And do you kind of understand what she tries to say the subman is? So we can be ethically disclosing existential agents, right? But there are going to be individuals who don't want to stare down that ambiguous condition and want to live in the world of ready-made values. How do you understand the subman?
I kind of understood it as someone who, from sort of an existentialist perspective, never matures. Instead of trying to like wrestle with that ambiguity, they just start to ascribe to whatever, values that are kind of assigned to them by society. Like, well, when you turn 18, it's expectable. You have to go to college. Okay, go to college. Once you graduate college, you have to either go to grad school, get your PhD, or get an entry-level job. Oh, okay, I get the entry-level job. Oh, to do that, then you need a promotion so you can get that nice car that you always wanted. That's kind of what I see in my mind, is someone that doesn't necessarily challenge society. Right,
and so this individual, right, keeps fleeing into the ready-made values of society. And what does she say that the subman is like? And this is really fascinating, because your generation has this thing called fear of missing out or something
FOMO.
Like that. What is, for the old folks, explain to us what FOMO is.
FOMO is, I think like a prime example would be if you decide to stay in on a Friday night and while you have a group of like the remainder of your friends who go out. And, it's a lot of it has to do with social media, where you get a lot of pressure to do things or act in like a certain way.
Right. So okay. So maybe contextualize. What are like the ready-made values of your generation?
Oh gosh.
Well, I mean, am I putting you too much on the spot? I mean,
No,
I could speculate, but it seems like old man and curmudgeon-y if I do it.
I'm kind of out of touch with my own generation.
I know. Well, do you ever experience FOMO?
I mean,
do you feel like you don't live the glamorous life,
I mean,
Jordan?
jokingly, I call it, I saw it somewhere online. It's called JOMO, the joy of missing out.
I think I have that.
That's what I kind of experience, for the most part.
So I guess the way the fear of so I guess what I'm trying to say here is that if we were to look in contemporary society who the submen are, right, it would be people who easily subscribe to what society dictates what the good life looks like, right? Mm-hmm. And what is our society now? I don't know. I'm not out of touch with society. I don't even have TV, so I don't even know what's going on. But like, what does our society say that's like good right now? Like, you have to have what to be like a happy functioning member of society? Like
a smartphone.
Yeah, you gotta have that. That would be weird not to have a smartphone. It would be weird to not go to the club with your girl squad. Did I say that right? with your squad, which would imply girls. Are you in my squad? I think we have a squad.
Yeah, do we?
I think we have a squad. We have a squad goal. You, me, and CJ and others.
I guess.
Yeah. So squad goals.
Yeah.
Squad goals. What are some other things?
Oh gosh, I'm like probably the worst person to ask.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you gotta have good food to take pictures of or something
right,
like
yeah.
that.
So like brunch, like everyone is like fanatical about brunch.
Oh, and drinking.
Yeah.
The anesthetizing culture, like everybody's just like annihilating themselves to death with alcohol. Like I get on. Everybody's like, "Oh, look at me drinking wine."
Thirsty Thursday.
Like, yeah. Right. And so these are like some of the ready-made values that people think that they have to subscribe to.
Right.
So we're going on and on and on about it. Right. So what does she say about the submen and how they feel in relation to that life that is defined for them?
Which is kind of interesting because they don't necessarily like engage in it. Like it's really boring for them.
Yeah, they're bored.
Because you just kind of like, you just go through the motions. Like you wake up, you commute, sit in traffic, go to your cubicle. You sit in your cubicle, you get in your car and you drive home.
The life is defined for you and it's telling you where the happiness is, and then you do all these things and you're absolutely miserable.
Right, and that's kind of like what I think it kind of speaks to Simone's belief that, imprisonment is the worst thing because you have your entire life planned out for you day after day after day, and it's kind of the same way for like the subman, but it's by his own volition, which is even worse. So when we like fulfill these cultural tropes or whatever, we are becoming submen, and we experience sort of a vacuousness in our life or whatever. But I still like happy hours. You like your happy hours. I find submen to be pretty boring, and submen is not men; it's men and women. Like some people, sheeple. Yeah, well, we got to be careful about that sheeple comment. That's going to come back to bite you here in about 2 pages. I know, but I think what's the real danger about this, not only to the individual that you live a life that's like miserable, that you've essentially created a somewhat a seemingly innocuous form of life imprisonment, is that these are the people, because these people don't have to deal with the anguish of staring down the ambiguous condition, subscribe to ready-made values, blah, 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 blah. What can happen to these individuals? Well, the scary thing is that they can be co-opted. Yes, exactly. Talk more about that. And talk about how Simone relates it to the historical context of her time. Yeah, so, just the fact that if you're kind of like living, and it makes sense, like fundamentally, if you don't care about your own life, how are you going to care about the outcome of other people's lives? Or certain people's lives. Maybe you can define, if the society tells you that certain people's lives don't matter. Yeah, in her case, well, that's what happened in Europe. Yeah. In Europe, you had a whole, everyone got on the whole anti-Semitic wave,
anti-homosexual, anti-Semitic, anti-Romanian, anti-handicap.
Yeah, exactly.
So all these people by society were determined to be outside. Right, not human.
Right, and I think that I really liked how she emphasized the tendency to otherize and the subman's fear of things that aren't familiar and how terrifying that is. So it's easier to just otherize people who might not be like you.
Yeah. And so,
and how dangerous that is.
I think this is really phenomenal, and I really want to do something on Hannah Arendt one day, because I think Simone and her would have so much to say about this. But I mean, she's trying to address the human condition here, but is giving a pretty effective account for how Nazism came to power. Mm-hmm. The fact that there were so many submen within Germany at that time that were so bored with their lives and were so miserable that when Hitler came along, Hitler was a breath of fresh air. They had something to live for, at least,
Right.
Like their own lives had become just so worthless to them that maybe if they attached themselves to this crazy ideologue, like maybe they would have some sort of value in a collective.
Yeah, and I mean, given the economic state of Germany in the 30s, with all the war reparations that the rest of the world imposed on them, she does make a really excellent point that when you are in a very limited economic situation, you are more likely to ascribe to the values that are given to you because you feel extremely limited.
Yeah, what? It's hard. It's hard when you're in it. I think that we haven't.
So that's almost like on a macro level. I mean, if you think about it, like in 50s and 60s, I mean, like women couldn't open their own bank accounts. Like everything was in the control of your husband.
I think, I mean, we talked about oppression last time and how Simone de Beauvoir viewed oppression in regards to women and people who had been enslaved. I think it's really hard when you're economically disadvantaged, right?
Right.
Because if you're just if everything you're trying to do is to survive within the society, it's hard. Like you and I have a luxury that we can do this, right? Like that we can
absolutely.
do that we can talk about. On a Thursday morning, you and I get to talk about existentialist philosophy. What are a lot of other people doing right now? Like they're filing paperwork and other BS, right?
Well, I mean, they're actually working because they don't have the freedom that we do.
Yeah. And so you and I can get all highfalutin about what it means to be an ethical person and blah, 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 and all that. But not everybody's afforded that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, because we're in a privileged position.
Yeah. I mean, some would even say we may be in a metaphysically privileged situation.
Yeah,
but it might be worth some self-examination on that. I mean, we talked about that last time about how I think a lot of people, I don't know if I'm getting too confessional here, but a lot of people view me as a man-child as the result of the fact that I've just stayed in school forever, right? Mm-hmm. And never really truly climbed the corporate ladder. But that freed me up to do all this sort of philosophical cogitation and allowed me to have this but what I'm trying to say here is that this economic suppression, the fact that of survival or whatnot, is what might make it so easy for people to become submen and become co-opted by totalitarian movements. The interesting thing is that capitalism moves the goalposts about what survival looks like. What do you need to survive, Jordan? I think it's excusable. I'm trying to say here is that survival, and if there are people who are just fighting to live every single day, it's somewhat excusable, I think, for them to become submen because they need food and water and shelter and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're worried about choosing what utilities am I gonna pay and what can I put off to the next month. When you're making those choices, you're not going to be as concerned with, existential crises.
Right, but this is the thing about capitalism and why Simone de Beauvoir is not going to be a raging capitalist, right? Because capitalism says you need this to survive. And the fact of the matter is, you don't need 80% of what capitalism says that you need to survive. For instance, capitalism says that you need to be able to watch The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones. And in order to watch that, you need a big TV. And in order to do that, do you need Netflix or something? I don't even know.
Yeah,
right?
you need some sort of like subscription to some thing, like HBO.
Yeah, if you're going to be able to talk about Game of Thrones at the office, you're going to have like $1,000 TV and pay.
It's like the book if you give a mouse a cookie, you know?
I'm 36 years old. What are you talking about?
Okay, well, I mean, it's like a children's book, but it's, like, it just snowballs, you know?
Yeah. Or like other things like I've got to like have like nice clothes so people will take me seriously. Right? Yeah. Nice clothes. Like these become part of the survival. Or we've got to have nice microphones in order to do something that makes us disclose our vitality.
Right.
And so we're constantly chasing these material goods that redefine what survival is. Guess what? We never break out of the sub-man adolescence. Mm-hmm. And so it's like it makes the case for living simpler.
More simply.
I don't know. What do you think about all that? Did I just go on a rant?
Maybe.
But I think was a worthwhile rant.
Yeah. No, I think that especially now with just the amount of like material and advertising that we experience every day, you get sort of enculturated almost into like the cult of buying things. Of I need that. You know, do I really need that? Probably not. But do I need it?
Well,
yes.
I can't hate on capitalism too much, right? Because guess what capitalism is allowing us to do?
This. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the problem.
The fact that everybody
kicking and screaming about this sort of stuff, but we all buy into the system to a degree.
Right. But the fact that people need an iPhone, right? So now we've turned it on its head. Cool. Glad you needed an iPhone. Here's philosophy. Something that was in front of your face all along, but now it's on your iPhone. You just had to go to the library. Now you just have to open an app.
Yeah.
So it's weird. We've used capitalism to do something anti-capitalist, which happens all the time.
Yeah.
Marx was funded.
So basically you're saying we're undermining capitalism.
In a way. If people start
with one download at a time.
Well, yeah. If people listen to this, they will likely be less interested in material goods. And they'll probably be, if you're filling your head with philosophy, you can't really fill it with fever dreams of dressing up like someone for Game of Thrones and having just the coolest costume at the Halloween party.
Or Comic-Con. Probably, yeah.
You know? So it is weird. But this wouldn't be the first case where someone benefited from capitalism to do something anti-capitalist. I mean, like I was saying, Marx was funded.
Yeah.
He just sat around and wrote the Communist Manifesto. So,
exactly.
And a lot of people point out that contradiction.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's this uneasy balance between intellectual thought and capitalist societies. You've just got to use...
Most writers have some sort of...
a trust fund or some thing.
Or some sort of benefactor.
Yeah, Kierkegaard did. Kierkegaard had an inheritance that he lived off of. Wittgenstein came from an incredibly wealthy family. To be honest, if you really look at it, there are very few... you'll be surprised. If you look into I learned this working in music and stuff like that, some of the most successful struggling artists that I know actually come from a lot of money. And it's the same as I learn more about the biographies of people who do philosophy, like the greats, they actually came from a lot of money. And the money frees them up. Like Kierkegaard didn't have to teach philosophy because he lived off that inheritance it ran out the day he died. But he didn't have to go and grade papers, he didn't have to go and do other things that other people have to do. So he was able to be so prolific because he was wealthy.
Right.
You know?
And that's Pliny. I don't know, Pliny the
Younger. Didn't Simone come from a good family?
Yeah, she came from a pretty good family.
It's easy. Mm-hmm. It's easy on some level. All right. Okay. We've covered a lot of ground. All right, so let's move on. Pages 45 through 50. We talked a good bit about the Subman. I think we've covered everything there. Pages 50 through 55. She says something that's interesting about submen is that they can't really, they can't even sort of grasp their own ironic position. So something that some men often do is they're hypercritical of other people who have also embraced ready-made values. So I don't know. I think of I see this all the time, right? Like where individuals think they are enlightened, right? Because they have the right values, right? And then they go and they condemn another group that has different values from them. So I see you see it in the political realm all the time, right? Like how does it? How do you see this working out in like the political realm? Like, for instance, like, well, I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong. I'm just going to talk about it. All right. So like, people with their political values tend to think they have the right values, right? So more like liberal people will like sit and bash on Christian people or conservative people, but they're kind of they're opposite sides of the same coin, right? They're both kind of just. I mean, there can.
I tend to agree with it because in terms of thinking of politics as a spectrum, the further right and left you go, the more entrenched and dug in they are. So they're just both equally hard-headed about stuff.
So Rush Limbaugh goes and bashes liberals, right? Meanwhile, is Rush Limbaugh like doing innovative ethical theory with any sort of nuance and rethinking his values, or has he just kind of been the same dude forever? He's kind of had the same. He's just been kind of saying the same thing every day on the radio since 1988.
Props to him to make money off of it.
Yeah, maybe we should do that. Why do we try to develop so much new content? Why don't we just say the same thing all the time?
We should just grandstand all the time.
Yeah, we should just put other people down.
Yeah.
Yeah, why are we doing this?
Yeah,
I quit.
we're done. this is over.
This is way too hard. We just figured it out. If we can just marginalize the people that disagree with us, we can make so much money.
Yeah, that's where it's at.
Why aren't we doing that?
I feel like Simone wouldn't like the fact that we're otherizing everyone.
I know. We'd have to own up to Simone.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, she says it's some men like Rush Limbaugh or who would be or Bill Maher. Bill Maher. Oh, Jesus Christ. Like Bill Maher is like always lecturing everybody. And I'm just like the dude has his own prejudices that he doesn't even acknowledge. He gets a little bit more nuanced in his discussions or whatever, but he just thinks that he is God, doesn't he?
You know, I haven't watched him enough to like really like be like totally agree with you, but there is definitely something to be said for when people are just, you know, like regardless. Stubbornness is just stubbornness.
Yeah. Gotta show some flexibility. There you go. So, what else do we want to say there? What was interesting about the Subman, I thought she didn't think that Submen were necessarily dumb. No. Right? Rush Limbaugh, not dumb. Yeah. Bill Maher, not dumb. Very intelligent people. She says that even though Submen can subscribe to unconditional values and ready-made values and whatnot, and have their existence based in that rather than generating it within, they can have tremendous professional technique, right? Mm-hmm. Bill Maher and Rush Limbaugh are incredibly good at what they do. Yeah. The example that came to mind when I was thinking about like Submen with like heightened professional technique would be like a doctor with bad bedside manner. Yeah. Like I've gone to doctors before and they're like, okay, like here is the thing to cure you of this thing. Also, I hate you. Or that's the vibe. Like they're like, I'm going to like dramatically improve your physical health, but I'm going to make you feel like a terrible person in the process.
Yeah, or like I don't know. There's this one doctor that I went to one time, and I tried like cracking a joke with him, and he just was not having it.
I don't do jokes. Yeah, I save lives.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and what do doctors typically have? Like a God complex too, right? Because they are. That marriage of ready-made values and technique gives them a inflated sense of self.
But I still really like doctors. So.
Oh no, I'm not putting down doctors, but I'm just saying that it's a well-known fact that people.
I mean, it's like the trope. It's like the trope, you know, of like like an absolutely like brilliant doctor with like very poor social skills.
House. The whole show House is built around. You could say you could maybe make the case that House is some kind of subman. I've never seen it, but I just seen like the commercial. Do you think House is a subman? Does he? What are his?
He's a drug addict, so
he's a drug addict.
Yeah.
Oh, what are his ethics like?
Is he? He's kind of like a rogue doctor. I mean, I haven't seen it in years.
He like MacGyver stuff.
Yeah, it's always
so he's
like,
really he's got the technique down. But what about
he's kind of a maverick when it comes to being a doctor, though.
Does he like?
He's like an unconventional doctor, like.
Does he do things that are unethical?
Yeah, I think.
Is he concerned with ethics at all? Does he want to be a good person at all?
Probably not.
No.
Probably not. Yeah. Drug
addict. Interesting. All right. So maybe House would be. Do you think House would be a subman?
Yeah, he could be like a smarter subman.
Yeah. Well, we said that. Yeah. I mean, intelligence and being a subman are not mutually exclusive. So let's see here. Something else she talks about in terms of like the subman having the intelligence or whatever. If you take them out of their environment, it shows the lack of development in other areas, right? Like if you take a doctor with incredibly good technique and put him in like a party or whatever, you don't want that person at your party.
Right, that's the person that you just kind of stick in the corner, buy all the snacks.
Maybe that's why I don't get invited to parties.
Maybe.
Like I'm terrible at parties.
Do you just like stand by the snack bowl and just like eat everything?
I think I do this at parties. Like I don't like dance or like, yeah, Game of Thrones is awesome. Like I don't
Probably not.
No, I'm just like, I am the most intense man in the world.
Hey. Gotta work on that then.
I don't know. But I stopped going to parties. I don't have the fear of missing out. But
true.
I wonder if I'm a subman. I don't know. But yeah, they're saying that they don't have that ability to have any sort of warmth or disclosure of self in situations outside of the things that they're comfortable in. I don't really put myself in those situations. I wonder if I should.
Maybe. Never hurts.
Yeah. But she also says it happens with the has-been. Do you want to describe the has-been? Do you recall what she says about the has-been?
Is it kind of like that they were like really great in like their own field at some point, and then once they lost relevance in that field, then they just become
like a joke,
lame.
Right, like it's like we think like has been typically like actors or whatever. Like the Fonz was like the coolest dude in the world, and then like he gits old and he's like, ew, he looks like my uncle. Or something like that, you know? Mm-hmm. Or like she mentions, does she mention this? Or maybe I came up with this example in the lecture about how like a general who had the prowess of like winning wars and whatnot, and then once they're out of combat and they have to return to civilian life, it kind of just like seems like a joke. Like, did you ever watch King of the Hill?
Like a little bit.
You know, did you?
That's like a little bit before.
Yeah, well, I love that show. Like King of the Hill, Hank Hill's father, like fought in Korea and and was like this incredible war hero. But then he comes around and he's like crazy because he doesn't know how to like operate in the real world. He was so skilled as a fighter, like he ends up turning the world into he sees the world as kind of a battle zone.
Yeah.
But so he's got all these like. He's always trying to mount attacks and plans and things like. He's like, dude, this is real life. This is not a war.
Yeah,
you can't
like this is like a civilian life.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But the great thing about being a subman, if you are that doctor who is boorish, if you are the military general that doesn't fit into society anymore, guess what Simone says you can do?
What is it?
She says you can change. You're not forever a subman.
Yeah, like you can have that conversion.
You can undergo existential conversion
at any point in your life.
You can transcend adolescence. You can redefine yourself. One of my mentors, was precisely this. One of my mentors, he was a war hero, and he fought in Vietnam, and worked for the Pentagon, had a total military life and everything like that. He ultimately succumbed to lung cancer as a result of being exposed to Agent Orange. But he was a very, very big intellectual influence on me. But he was also, so after his military career was over, he went and got a PhD in African studies. And he redefined himself. Cool. Yeah. And he's a big reason why I went and got my PhD, is that he sort of believed in me. I guess he saw that I had like the intellectual spirit for it or whatever, and he pushed me towards it. But
I think it goes to show that you can have like many different like lives within your own lifetime. It's not like, you don't, like I received some advice, like, cause I, had my own existential crisis of, oh my God, like, what am I going to do when I graduate? And, I was told, you're not getting married to like a career, or like it's not like a soulmate, I'm like,
you can change it up anytime you want.
So yeah, that's kind of like the idea, like your life is your own, but you're not wedded to like one line of like destiny.
Yeah, like, well, I had that too. My whole life had been about trying to be this awesome musician, and then when I kind of felt like it wasn't ever going to happen, like I got really morose. And then I just got in the depths of that despair. I was like, well, what's the only other talent that I have? And it's like, I really like teaching philosophy. Maybe there are other people who like philosophy, and maybe we can build a community around it, and maybe I could like do something cool with it. And like, I just totally reinvented myself. And like, maybe this runs its course. Like, maybe we do this for like 5 years, and we're like, man, there's no money in public philosophy, or there's no this or that in philosophy. We become servants to it.
We get FOMO, and we jump onto the next cooler thing.
Yeah, maybe we want jet skis or something like that. I don't know, but with Simone is trying to say is that we can constantly sort of redefine ourselves, and there's a dignity in being able to close the door to an old project and opening up a new one.
Right.
The point is that you just got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think about it, like, I've got these songs that I've written that exist in song purgatory. Like, I spent hundreds of hours of them, and they're like sitting on a hard drive somewhere waiting to be released. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they'll ever be released. And like a year ago, I would have, if like the thought of those songs never coming out into the world would have crushed me because I spent so much time on them. But now, because I've reconstituted my ethical project into this philosophy endeavor, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, and I think
all that matters is this moment. All that matters is the process of what we're making. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter if we're successful. I mean, I think we will, because people seem to be. We got to be really cool. We're a professional studio today. If you build it, they will come. But like, what really matters is that we're disclosing ourselves with vitality in this moment. Do you feel alive, Jordan? Because I do.
Yeah, feel pretty good.
I feel pretty good.
Especially with that coffee. Yes, I am feeling alive.
I don't know if it's I don't know if it's the Simone.
Could be like artificially induced, but that's fine.
I don't know if it's the Simone or the espresso.
Yeah. Maybe a combination.
Yeah, probably a combination.
Yeah.
I'm kind of seeing things right now. It was a late night last night. I did, in case anyone's interested, I did have a spiritual awakening on part 4 of Roland Barthes' Camera Lucida. It crept up on me like something that creeps up on you. It was crazy.
That's insane.
It was. I've had 2 spiritual awakenings in philosophy in my life. When I first read Socrates, the 5 dialogues, Plato's 5 dialogues, and Socrates dies, I wept. And last night, talking about Camera Lucida with CJ on the
which is so interesting, because you weren't so crazy about it initially.
I know. I thought it was like kind of interesting. I thought the book about photography was just kind of an interesting appreciation of photography, and like technique. It turned out to be
so much more.
And then like, when I started, I had this revelation last night on the Barth podcast where I was like, oh, wait. I think what Barth is trying to say is that photos distill the divinity of being. And then when you start to think about photos that way as like these instances of holiness, I was like, oh God. Then you see like the world alive with divinity. And I just like, I wanted to weep. It was a crazy insight.
That's awesome.
And I don't know. Something about CJ's questioning and a passage that he read, and it kind of like, all of it kind of came together, and I was like, holy crap. Like, I almost cried. Whatever. I'm starting to well up again. Let's get back to the Simone. Okay. So we talked about the has-been. I got some questions here. Maybe we've already talked about it. What is it about existentialist conversion that prevents professional bores or has-beens? What is the proper ethical disclosure? Do we know enough at the point to draw out the distinction? So what do you think it is about existentialist conversion that prevents us from being insufferable bores? So like when we become like when we make our own values and try to decide what the good is for ourselves. Mm-hmm. I guess, so what is happening there is, what's going on in our minds?
I think it's just, you're being more in the present, aren't you? Like you're engaging with the people and the things around you more.
Everything matters.
Yeah, it's like every interaction is significant.
Like me asking you to bring coffee today was like a momentous ethical request and return of the request, right?
Right.
Like I could have treated you like my slave intern, mm-hmm. right? And you could have been like, I'm just doing this for my tyrant boss. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like that, right? We had an ethical exchange over coffee where I was just very respectfully said, hey, it's actually easier for you to do this since it's on your way. And like, I'd really appreciate it because I was working so hard on the other stuff. And you were like, I'm happy to do it because we have become ethically existential people where we're not really using one another.
Right. And I think that goodwill has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's how we prevent ourselves from becoming submen and has-beens on the ethic. Every moment is an ethical moment.
Yeah.
What about when there's not a person around? Because I have this thing where I feel like I'm going to just drop dead. Okay. Mm-hmm. So like I have this feeling like I'm going to have like an aneurysm, a brain tumor. And so I just work because I'm just like, I don't know when the Grim Reaper is coming and I have to make my etch upon the world. So every moment of my being is an ethical act. If I engage in indolence or laziness or something that distracts from ethical projects, like I feel like I'm doing something unethical and I hate myself. Even if there's not a person there.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know, if I'm like dog walking and if I like see litter, like I pick it up because like litter makes me sad.
Yeah.
So I pick it up. It's not like it's something that I just kind of do just because I care about the environment.
Is there an ethical dimension to the dog walking that you do?
Yeah, like as a favor and stuff like that from
time
to time.
Yeah, like everything is like an ethical activity. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. That's awesome. Okay, so the subman, right? Like you would think that the subman, because everything is defined for them or whatever, that they don't really have much of a mental life going on or whatever. But that's not true. She says that there's a lot of anxiety and preoccupation with the subman.
Right.
Like
they're really frustrated, but
why are they so anxious and riddled with preoccupation?
Is it just because they're like there's no vitality in what they're doing?
That's true, but there's another angle to it. What does the subman secretly know? The subman's not dumb, right? The subman knows. They know they're submen. And what does it mean to know that you're a subman?
Other than it means that you are like kind of like putting yourself in a box knowingly and willingly. That's why I'm so hung up on like the will about this. It's because, it's like when you get yourself into a position where you know that you've like pinned yourself in that corner. You know that you haven't fully actualized. You know that you have subscribed to ready-made values. You know your life is a sham. Mm-hmm. If you're a subman, you secretly know that. So you're anxious. But you don't want to really know it. It's like a subconscious level, right? It's like you just keep pushing it down and pushing it down. It's like. Is that why people have like midlife crises? I don't know, but I think it'd be a good explanation for it. I mean, it's like this house of cards that you constantly have to stable, or like a dike that you constantly have to plug, or what would be another good example? Sweeping something under the rug that you keep tripping over. You're constantly willing. It's all going to come crashing down. Yeah. What would be what would be a good example of that? American Beauty. Have you seen American Beauty? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah, what's his name? Lester Bangs, is that his name? It's been years since I. No, that's a news anchor. His name's Lester, I believe. Mm-hmm. But he has everything, right? Yeah. He has the nice house. He has the attractive wife. He's got the scare quote perfect life. He's got the perfect life, and it's utterly hollow. Yeah. Right, and then he has a break with reality, right? Yeah. And he starts he has a break with reality and shuns it all, and he starts lifting weights and smoking pot and doing other things, other salacious things, and that's not necessarily what Simone's going to be arguing for. But he kind of goes in a different direction. He doesn't necessarily do the true ethical
disclosure. It's been a while since I've seen it, so maybe he does. But you could say Kevin Spacey's character is at least the sub-man who undergoes crisis.
Yeah.
And I don't know, are there other examples of that? Sub-men that undergo crises in popular culture?
Office Space.
Oh, yeah! Office Space would be a great...
Movie.
Or like when Al Gore didn't win the presidency and he grew out that crazy beard.
Oh, yeah, that was I was pretty...
Oh, gosh, I forget how young you are.
I'm just a whippersnapper.
Yeah. Yeah, but there are all these... You have these sort of psychological breaks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. But the sub-man can rise to the level of higher consciousness that none of this stuff matters, right? And then what does the sub-man possibly become, she says?
Well, there's the danger because the sub-man can also flirt with nihilism.
Yeah! I mean, I'm not celebrating nihilism, but I'm celebrating
nihilism!
And so how do you understand what a nihilist is? Because that word is thrown around a lot, like in like the Big Lebowski and whatever else. What do you think nihilism is?
I mean, to me, it just seems, of course, just because like for me, it's like Latin-y, so it's like nihil. That's like nothing. Like nothing matters. Nothing has any meaning. Like I don't have any meaning. No one else has any meaning. You know, that's kind of how I understand it. But there are like 6 million strands of nihilism, so that's much more your territory than mine.
Yeah, I mean, the type of nihilism that you're talking about here is just that that they realize that there are no enduring sort of values in the world, right? But it doesn't. So there is an ultimately sort of a leveling kind of effect, right? Mm-hmm. Now there are different types of nihilists that we're going to talk about here. There is sort of the tame and innocuous nihilist, right? And that is sort of the person, and this is where your comment's going to come back to bite you, that just kind of reacts to the cultural values that are out there. Yeah. And this is probably before your time as well, but I thought of MTV's Daria. Did you ever watch that show?
That was a little bit. Like that's just, like King of the Hill, Daria. That's like stuff I kind of watched, but I wasn't supposed to.
Yeah, it's probably like a crossover episode between the two of them. But so she's kind of just like this like really jaded high schooler who sees the emptiness of everything, and is just like who's just like, oh God, constantly sort of like sighing and rolling her eyes or whatever.
To me, that almost seems like, you know, when you're like trying to like make plans to go out to dinner. And like there's always that one friend that's like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. And you're like, well, do you have any other suggestions? No. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like just rejecting everything, but offering absolutely no solutions whatsoever.
Well, she says that this type of nihilist. I also think of someone who calls somebody sheeple. Mm-hmm. You're a sheeple. You like the Golden State Warriors just because they're really good right now. You're a sheeple. Or you like Donald Trump. You're a sheeple. Or you like Bernie Sanders because you're a sheeple. Like. I almost always I feel like that is the type of nihilist we're talking about here, the more innocuous nihilist. Right. But the thing is I mean the thing is about the nihilist. She says that the nihilist kind of needs unconditional value. Why do they need unconditional? Why does Daria need to say no to everything? Why does someone need to call other people sheeple? Why?
Because you need something to like scoff at.
It's for their own perverse entertainment, isn't it? Yeah. I thought that was like the nihilist actually needs a world of unconditional value so they can have something to like just to find any sort of joy or whatever in their life. And it intimates that in a way they're kind of affirming it by mocking it. If they didn't mock it, like what would they do with their lives, right? Because they don't really have any sort of ethical projects or anything of their own to live for.
Yeah, and it's not like they're offering some sort of alternative. You know, it's not, oh, here's like this parallel system that I've set up. It's, oh, that's dumb.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, so there are, she talks about, you know, like, other sort of reflexive reactions to the ambiguous condition, anarchism and surrealism, which doesn't really, she finds them sort of problematic because they don't really offer anything. She mentions the demonical man. Do you understand the demonical man? I thought was interesting because I think we can see that in like comic books and stuff like that. How do you understand what she says a demonical man to be?
I have a quotation. I'll let you kind of explain a little bit more.
What I understand the demonical man to be is like he is the nihilist who understands that there's like no value or whatever, but he's not as innocuous as our Daria or as our sheeple guy. He's like, there's no value. I'm going to F things up. Like in my mind,
almost he's like bent on like destruction.
Yeah, in my mind, I think of like the Joker from like the Batman movies, where he's just like this radical nihilist, where he's just like super violent, and he's like, yeah, there's nothing good or true in the world, and I'm not going to actualize ethics or anything like that. I'm just going to go out. I just want to see the world burn.
Yeah,
I get. And maybe,
that's like the perfect example.
Like, or that scene from Fight Club where Ed Norton pummels Jared Leto in. Have you seen Fight Club?
I've seen like parts of it.
So in Fight Club, they're fighting in the basement, and he bashes Jared Leto's face in.
Yeah.
And they ask, they pull him off of him, and they ask him, "Why did you do that?" And he's like, I wanted to destroy something beautiful. And I think that is the demonical perspective. Yeah. I think the Joker...
Is it kind of like destruction for the sake of destruction?
Yeah. There's a movie, right, where someone says some men just want to see the world burn.
Yeah, some men just like to watch the world burn.
What
I don't know the reference. I say that like frequently, and it's my own sort of vernacular, but I actually don't know where like the actual source is.
Yeah.
If someone could let us know, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. In the discussion forum on the Noetic app. Also make a donation. I don't know. What did you want to say about the demonical?
Actually, I haven't found it yet.
Well, what do you think about my depiction? Do you think it's right?
Yeah, I mean, because Simone says that like the problem with nihilism is that there are some people that take it to... Which is confusing because she says they'll take it to like a violent end, which is funny because in my mind, like nihilism just means like nothing, and you're just kind of like neutral, like you're choosing not to participate in the world. Am I making any sense? Maybe I'm just rambling.
Say that once more.
Just because for me, like what I had a hard time teasing out is being a nihilist, but also being destructive. Yeah,
so there's a difference between being the sort of innocuous nihilist that we're talking about, the demonical man who's just like destroying anything in its wake. And then she's going to talk about, she makes not a recommendation, but she says that the sort of innocuous nihilist perspective is unsustainable. That if you really sort of grasp the utter incompleteness of values, their impermanence, their fabricated nature or whatever, she thinks that the nihilist will assert itself in destruction, right? And this is why the Nazi movement was so like that. Really, the Nazi movement was a commingling of submen and nihilists, because nihilists, if they understand that there's like no intrinsic value or whatever, they can use means of power to suppress other people. And that's what sort of attracted so many people to the Nazi movement.
Yeah.
Not that they were just so easily co-opted because other people were doing the thinking for them, but they saw an opportunity to sort of express their will upon other individuals, to positively assert their negative aspect.
Yeah, and doesn't she say, I'm looking for it, which is why I'm like combing through the text, that the terrifying thing about Nazism is that it married nihilism and suicide. Yeah. Like that. Like you were just so willing to have power over somebody else that your own life didn't even matter. Yeah. You could just throw it away. Right. Because you'd have just a taste of superiority or something like that. And we don't have to do that with the ethical existentialist perspective, because if we're disclosing ourselves in the proper way, we can feel our superiority over the physical realm of nature because we know that we have dignity. We don't have to go and oppress other people. We don't have to subjugate other people, and we don't have to destroy our lives for a totalitarian state because we know we're good. Yeah. Like, we know our lives have value independent of all these objective things. Oh, okay, yeah. So she says Nazism was both a will for power and a will for suicide at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, I'm going to do what I want and I'm going to gain power and I'm going to take everyone down with me.
Yeah.
Which, totally makes sense, because if your own life doesn't matter, then why would feel like the lives of others matter to you at all?
No. So, I had some questions here to wrap up. I mean, and I think we've probably already addressed them. Let me just read them here. Why doesn't the positively asserting nihilist have a legitimate worldview on de Beauvoir's perspective? I mean, they are sort of refashioning values on some level. I mean, they understand the unconditional perspective and they're recreating a universe of value. And I think what de Beauvoir would say is the nihilist doesn't understand we are to create meaning through existential freedom. The nihilist rejects freedom and seeks to establish tyranny over all others. The existentialist wills freedom, which entails willing the freedom of others' ethical projects. And that's going to be the big difference between what happens in existential conversion. It's not just about, it is about the individual, but look at us, right? I developed this Noetic thing because I wanted to disclose my ethical being in a new way, right? Mm-hmm. And this field of existential freedom was generated. And then you caught it, right? And CJ caught it. Mm-hmm. And now you, me, and CJ are becoming these nodes of radiating existential freedom. And then there are people in your lives that are going to catch it. And then eventually
it becomes almost like the individual level, and then it'll kind of emanate to the collective.
Right.
But then once you are aware of the collectivity in a way that kind of limits your own motions, right? Because then you're acting in other people's interests as well as your own. Right.
But but what the interesting thing is, by focusing so much on individual ethical disclosure, we open other people up for ethical disclosure, and then it creates a feedback loop. So all right, so no, I'm not. Look, you were an ethical person before I met you, so I don't want to take credit for existential conversion on your perspective, because that would be the totally pompous, narcissistic, mansplaining thing for me to do, which I'm trying to overcome.
Working on it.
I'm trying so hard, Jordan.
He tries.
He really
tries, guys. He's really trying.
But so we've entered into this virtuous relationship of ideas, right? So I'm ethically good to you. I'm intellectually good to you. You're ethically good to me, even if it's a cup of coffee or showing up here today to discuss existentialism. You bring new ideas into Noetic that allows us to be this crazy dynamic thing where we just keep feeding off of each other, even though we're focused on our own individual activity. By making myself better, I made you better. By making you better, you make me better.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's not so much, it's not an entirely selfless thing.
But I don't think about it. It's not like I knew. It's not even like I knew you would come along and want to do this with me.
Yeah, no, but you know what I mean, though. But it's funny because it's something that you do for yourself, but it benefits you.
It brings people to you.
Yeah.
That's why this book is so profound. When I was doing music, I was chasing unconditional values. I was chasing Grammys, rock stardom, glamour, whatever, right? And then chasing that end wasn't getting me to where I wanted to be, right? So then I just started doing my own thing, right? And now it's coming to me. Yeah. And I don't have to, and the less I try to get the goal, the more the goal comes to me.
Yeah.
And it's just a total inversion of how we think things ought to be done.
It's a lot easier.
So I was telling CJ last night that the Simone de Beauvoir thing, each of the texts that we've studied has fulfilled a different function for my dignity and the way I see things. This book brought you and CJ into my life. I would say Simone de Beauvoir Simone. I know you have some mixed feelings about me and where my ethical development, but if it weren't for Simone de Beauvoir, I don't know if I would be working with you or CJ. It really opened me up.
Yeah.
And who knows what else is going to come from this.
Yeah, I think that, especially for me being in my 20s, I really do think that it's never too late to read this, but as a young person, I know that this is going to be like one of those like seminal works that like changes my life.
Yeah. Do you feel it? I mean, I'm done with my stuff for today. What do you think?
Yeah, I think
do you feel it changing your life?
Yeah, I think just in the way that I interact with people, for sure.
Have you seen anyone else catch your ethical
Not yet.
project?
I don't have any any existential conversions.
I think you're converting people, you just don't know it.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, you have to report back on that. What I think
if anyone has an existential conversion, just let us know. Well, thanks.
maybe someone's hearing this right now.
Yeah.
You know, maybe someone picks up this book. I'll have to say is I read this book as an undergraduate, and I didn't do a close reading of it. And this is why I built the Noetic thing, is because is that the way that philosophy is taught is that you have to cover so much ground so quickly that you don't get to really like let the ideas seep in and creep up on you and change your life.
Yeah, I mean
that's why we go slow and deep. And you
have to let the ideas marinate.
Well, we let the ideas marinate here, and that's why I think they have a more. I guess if I had to make the case for why you should listen to our content and turn to us for philosophy over other people, is that like you will. I think it'll more profoundly affect your being than if you just like listen to a lecture somewhere. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Like I had like I said, I had like a religious experience going so slow over the Barth stuff last night with CJ, and right now I'm having this tremendous appreciation of everything we've done so far through Simone. You gonna have that in like a regular college class?
Probably not.
I don't think so. I don't think I have those moments very often. All right, it's a long one, guys. Anything else you want to say, Jordan?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
I need a nap.
Yeah.
Let's get some lunch.
That sounds good. Yeah. I'm starving.
If we go somewhere cheap,
good.
I'll buy you and Matt lunch.
Oh yeah.
And so I can buy them
Goodwill.
lunch. Download the Noetic app, and there's a blue button, donate on it, and you'll let me buy Jordan lunch.
Yeah.
Look. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Bye, guys.
I will accept Chipotle gift cards, though. If you want to donate.
Yeah, we got to set up an arrangement like that. All right. See you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.